Hello and welcome to the Voice of the People. I'm your host, Kenneth Murray Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth and I respect enough to give you the facts. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'd like to engage you in some conversation. It'll be a monologue. I'll give you some questions. I'll probably give you some answers based on what I think is correct and true and to the best interest of our community. The Voice of the People is a talk show that folks who don't normally have a voice will have a voice. So thank you for joining in. This show is sponsored by Myers Law, attorney Catherine Myers at 1803 Hampton Street in Columbia, South Carolina. Her phone number is 803-250-1176. So if you have a family law, criminal law, or civil law, you call attorney Catherine Myers, and don't let justice pass you by. She's a top-notch attorney. She's a fighter. When the other attorneys get in trouble, they call attorney Catherine Myers. So you do the same and call the Legal Eagle, Catherine Myers at 803-250-1176. We have a great show for you this evening. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow is not promised, but we do have the night. And so we'd like to sit back and relax and just talk a little bit about what we want to talk about. But first of all, I want to share with you, there's been some miscommunication out there. You've heard the governor say that we're no longer in the emergency status, and folks have taken the sign down out of the retail stores and grocery stores and that type of thing. And they're suggesting that the wearing of a mask is not important anymore. That is misinformation. That is not in your best interest. I encourage you to research Center for Disease and Control and DHEC and make decisions that's best for you and your situation. If you're over 55 or 60 and have underlying health conditions, you remain at risk even if you're vaccinated. What I'd like to share with you is that the vaccination rate, the president and the governor, everybody wants that to get up to about 70% or 80% to have community immunity or herd immunity. We are nowhere near that kind of number, so we're still at risk. In the state of South Carolina, about 60% of the white folks have been vaccinated. So that's good news for them. And then in the black community, about 16 to 17, 18% of black folks have been vaccinated. And that is bad news for the black community. We do know that black folks have been disproportionately affected by the virus because of underlying health conditions and because of systemic racism and because of limited access to health care, low-wage jobs, poor housing, and just an overall situation because of systemic racism that we have been denied opportunities, and we don't have a lot of us don't have insurance, and a lot of us are just working poor. So with that being said, I want to say this and take a good a good moment to think about this. Every family needs to be vaccinated, even the children over 12 years of age. And so when folks tell you that they're going to the movies, they're going to concerts and that type of thing, understand that when you do that, even if you wear a mask, you're being subjected to the virus. The virus is still among us. It has not gone away. And we have variants that's coming along. And so when you do that, when you congregate in a large number and take that back to your family and friends, you put them at risk. You could be putting your grandparents, your uncles, your aunts, and even your cousins and nephews. The whole family is at risk because the virus is still among us. Being vaccinated and wearing the mask and practicing social distance remain good practices to help us. In the state of South Carolina, we are a poor state, and as a black community, we are poor. And people are segregated by housing, by income levels. And we have a lot of black communities where we are down to about 5%. That means folks are just not getting vaccinated, and we put ourselves at risk because this coming fall, and when we go back into the buildings and it's the weather change, and the virus remains and the variants comes into play, the prediction is that we will suffer long suffering and death within the communities of color because we have not taken advantage of the opportunity to take the vaccine. Now, they've done a good job of getting food boxes to everybody. But I personally think that the vaccine should be a higher priority than food boxes. They find all kind of ways to get you a food box, but we need to find ways to get you the vaccine, and you still need to be tested. So I just wanted to share that with you. Don't get tricked and bamboozled by the majority media and the TV and the radio and the TV. So these local TV stations, whatever, they don't present both sides of the issue. They just report what's best for their community. And sometimes we listen to them and we have a level of trust that's unjustified. I repeat that, our level of trust for mainstream media, like television and that type of thing, is unjustified based on the history of black folks being violated and given misinformation for hundreds of years. So I just wanted to share that with you. Excuse me. Something that I find very, very interesting. Let's take the state of South Carolina. Black folks, we're about 27% of the population. We have a poor state. Anybody would tell you that. We have a rural, poor state, minimum wage and low income. You got manufacturing companies from all over the world, foreign countries, coming to South Carolina and Georgia and Mississippi and leaving third world countries, leaving China, right? Because you can get cheaper labor in South Carolina than you can get in undeveloped countries. That says a lot about the politics of South Carolina, and it says a lot about the citizens of South Carolina. We need to have a livable wage. We need to have economic development. We need to improve public education so we can have a more educated electorate. You vote better, and you vote better for your best interest when you're educated about politics, economics, race, and that type of thing. You have to understand how politics work. So I encourage you to let's be mindful of things that happen in our community. And traditionally, it continues to exist, and it's been so normalized that sometimes we just think that we can pray it away, and history has proven otherwise. So I want to give a message of encouragement and accountability to our faith-based leaders, to any person in the community of influence, to all elected officials, to all folks that got anybody that's listening to them. We encourage our people to vote. We encourage them to take the vaccine, encourage our people to get tested, encourage us to organize, to come up with some strategies. So if we're going to receive a food box, you ought to ask for the vaccine ought to be tested. So let's pray that we do a better job of taking care of ourselves. It's in our hands. We have the ability. We just have to wake up. The theme song for this show is "Wake Up, Everybody." We need to wake up and understand that this pandemic is going to wipe out more black people this year coming than last year, because when fall comes, if we don't have enough people vaccinated in our community, it's going to really be a tragedy. I also like to give a shout out and ask the question of why, during these difficult times, the pandemic, that poor whites are really suffering. Poor whites are dying, and that all the liberal white folks that like to get on the Black Lives Matter bandwagon, they like to get on the food insecurity bandwagon, they need to partner with so-called black leaders. The question is, why don't liberal white folks advocate and fight for poor white folks? That is a fundamental question that you must ask yourself. And white supremacy is so deeply embedded that some folks think that if a white person don't make it, that is their fault. Racism, discrimination, sexism, classism. Our poor white brothers and sisters experience some of the same things. And so we would like to think that we want everybody in our community to have a quality life, to have access to food, to have access to a livable wage that they can buy food. I personally think, and this is my personal opinion, I don't think we need to waste our time with food boxes. I don't think that's the answer to anything. I think the answer to building a community up, I think you need to get the children educated. We need families to be strong. We need mothers and fathers to work and make a livable wage. We need families and extended families to unite and to help one another. But feeding everybody is not the answer. But I do think we should use that methodology that we use and all those organization skills that we use. And everybody now, every church in particular, everybody brags about feeding working people that's too poor to have food. And so I want to share with you, there's a lot of people that need food. I'm not insensitive to that. You have a lot of elderly people on fixed income. They can't work. They need food. You have a lot of women that have decided to have children, and families have decided to have children that did not match their income or their job skill, and they need help because we need to save the children. The children did not ask to be here, but we cannot create a dependency on a drug or even food. Folks must maintain the competitive spirit and desire to work and provide for themselves and eat the food that they so desire. Most folks I talk to are tired because they don't have various choices with the food box. So being food insecure, that's a distraction, I think. Folks need to get educated, get a livable wage, register to vote, and vote your best interest. That is very interesting. So I want to talk about our white brothers and sisters out here who are poor. In the state of South Carolina, because blacks are only about 27%, we have more poor white folks in South Carolina than we have poor black folks, just based on the number. But we tend to stereotype and label all poor, working poor people as people of color, and the numbers just does not add up. Poor whites have suffered disproportionately because politicians in the state house, Republican and Democrat, I guess, have not did. It's the Medicaid expansion, access, it's the health care. It's been a while, maybe 40, 50, 60 years, and there's a reason in this country that poor whites and poor black folks can meet together at all these fast food places, and they can go to the football and basketball game and sit side by side and high-five each other, and you can see them all night long at 24-hour Walmarts. You can see them at Sam and Costco's. But they can't vote their best interests, and they cannot come together to save one another. Poor people, black, white, Hispanics, the only opportunity they will have to uplift themselves is to come together and be united in a voting bloc for their best interests. But because we have such a strong propaganda component in our communities, in our state, in our country, where we have folks hating each other and not even knowing why they're hating each other. And basically it's orchestrated. Racism and division among the races and the classes is good for business, and it's good for the politicians. So I encourage you to reach out to your white brother, to your black brother, and understand that we're all in this thing together. Poverty knows no race, knows no color. The virus knows no race, knows no color. And so let's have a conversation. And I say this, I brought this up because nobody talks about it. The voice of the people, we try to be the voice for folks that don't have a voice. I have a lot of poor white friends. I have a lot of poor black friends. And they're the same. The only thing different is the perception that people have of these folks. A poor black man working in a factory, trying to raise his family, trying to put food on the table, trying to pay the light bill, cable bill, that kind of thing. He's doing the best he can. Poor white man, a poor white woman, poor families, period. They're doing the best they can to get the children fed, keep them safe, put clothes on them, give them health care, get them an education. A lot of times, poor folks, black and white, they really don't have the information they need to really advocate and fight for their kids to get a quality education. Because all the scholars and the academic folks will tell you that to get out of poverty, you must educate yourself. So it's really a tragedy when poor white kids are being uneducated, about 35% of them. And the white liberals are not saying anything about that. And about 75% of black kids are being undereducated. And the black liberals and the black middle class are not saying anything about that. So poor black folks and poor white folks have been left by themselves. They don't have the knowledge and the skill to adequately organize and fight. And so it becomes a class war, and then other people try to make it a race war, but you have so many poor white people in South Carolina and so many poor black people that we just have to find a way that somebody would speak to the status of poor people. Even in the elections, everybody want to talk about the middle class, want to talk about taxes. Nobody talks about the majority of the voters. And if you're talking about the Democratic Party, which most black people vote, you cannot have a Democratic person, a politician, running for office and they dare not speak to poor people. Because black people in particularly, in the state of South Carolina, nationwide, we are not making a living wage. We're making a poverty wage. And how can we have a political party and we're not talking about what's in the best interest for the majority of us? And that's poor folks. That's poor folks who are working jobs. You cannot survive working in a fast food place, making $7, $8, $9 It's to the point now that working families cannot even get health care because they can't afford it. And so there's so much to talk about. I just want to give a shout out to let you guys know that nobody cares what happened to poor people in this country, including poor white people. I find that very interesting. And the question I have is for the white liberals and the progressives, that they always want to partner with black folks, but they want to ignore their own poor white folks. That's a challenge. And I think part of the strategies behind that is I think a lot of people realize the awesome power and the earth-shattering power it would be, particularly, let's say South Carolina, in the rural area, if poor whites and poor blacks could come together. I guess we have a different ideology. I guess we have the same Bible, but we have a different worldview, and we see each other based on what they taught us in the textbooks. And now most research would suggest that the textbook have such a severe problem with omission of facts and places and people that we need to kind of reconfigure that. We need to throw a lot of these textbooks out. I'm talking about history textbooks. Most society, your culture and your literature and your art, all of that thing give you your culture. And so we just have a very racist curriculum in this country. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I'm speaking enough to give you the fact. And so the black community has a challenge that I've seen all over the country. It's called gentrification, and that means that our neighborhood is being taken over, and they build new housing that we can't afford because we're undereducated, we're underpaid, and we're not organized to support our own businesses. So it's just a mess. But what has happened in the last year because of Black Lives Matter and because of extreme violence and murder of black men at the hands of law enforcement, it has caused a lot of people, and a lot of liberal whites, okay? I think we've had more liberal whites participate in the Black Lives Movement than we had middle-class blacks. I'm just talking about how it looks to me through my eyes. And so a lot of people think that if you're poor and you're white, that's unforgivable because the expectation is that you're superior. So if you're superior and you don't make it, you're just an embarrassment to the fundamental ideology of this country. They're saying if a white person can't make it, my God, because they know the system is designed for them to make it. And so, but I understand that. But I still have empathy and sympathy in my heart for any poor person trying to raise a family and trying to get a better future for their children. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect you enough is to give you the facts. We do this show to give you a concept, to give you a thought process that would cause you to see and cause you to have some hope. Okay, when is the last time that in the black community we threw up a tent and had some hot dogs and some hamburgers and some fish and grits and fish and rice and kept that money in the community is to help somebody hire somebody. So we have a situation now where you have a generation of young blacks that I guess for the last 30 or 40 years, they have come up on a curriculum and an ideology and a thought process is that they have been taught that they are inferior. And they haven't been told that they are inferior, but have so many practices and so many things that they're excluded that they feel like the standard of European whites and nose size and lip size and that type of thing, and with law enforcement and everything that's on the media. Think about it for a minute. social media teaches young black kids, and particularly little boys, it teaches them that they are endangered species and that they will be hunted down and shot down like animals in the street. And so that is psychological trauma. So why would we not be attentive to what we see happening? So somebody has to have a place. I suggest it's the family, extended family, and the church. That's the only institution we have. Historical Black College University is really getting some great press now and great marketing. And so you can be great at a historical Black College University. And now people are figuring out that black athletes make white coaches look smart. And so those same athletes go to the HBCU and they experience victory, they still won't give the black coaches credit and say that's a great coach. Okay, anybody who's coached any kind of sport tell you that about what a coach needs to be good at. You need to be a decent human being and you need to know how to recruit, because you cannot compete unless you get the best athletes. And the historic white college and university have done a good job of taking all of our children out of our community and marketing them and working them for nothing to make money for themselves and their community. But the hope is, and the good news is that you see historical Black College and University, and a lot of young black folks now want to go someplace where they're accepted, someplace where they're loved and nurtured, and they want to be in that loving environment of a historical Black College and University. So that is good news from where I stand. I am a proud graduate of a HBCU. I attended Talladega College in Talladega, Alabama. I attended Regent University, which is an extreme right evangelical school with Pat Robertson in Virginia Beach, and I went to Clemson to take some studies, and I went to Millis Tech to get a nursing degree. But my greatest empowerment was at a historical Black College University, where the staff and the whole community just embraced me and gave me an opportunity to be myself and to grow, and tolerated my imperfections and gave me the nurture and love that I needed to grow and mature into a young man. So, there's so much you can get from a historical Black college and university. And so I want to talk about my white brothers and sisters, because we're all in this thing together, and my Christian values dictate that I recognize anybody in need. And so I try to talk about topics that you won't hear in some of the places that you go, okay? Perhaps they don't know how to say it. Perhaps they are so entangled into the monetary type relationships that they refuse to do it. But we need to build a world where every life has a chance. What do I mean by that? I mean that every child that's born has the opportunity to get a quality education, to have dreams and to fulfill those dreams, and not experience barriers just because of the color of their skin. Now, I'm asking a lot, but I believe that we can do that, and I believe that if we continue to fight, that can happen. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth, and I respect enough to give the fight. Sometimes I become afraid. I've gotten threats by email, by text. I've gotten threats on the phone. I've seen folks see me in public places and give me threats, but I'm not afraid anymore. I would tell the truth, or I would try to speak in a manner that I don't want to be combative, but if it's perceived as being combative, so be it. I believe in the truth and the facts, and I'm just so excited that every Monday night we can talk to you. Sometimes we just say stuff to make you think outside the box, and I encourage you during these times, talk to your children, talk to your grandchildren. Sit down and make an agreement that I talk to you and you talk to me, and when we get through talking, we still love each other. But the worst thing you can do is require a child to be silent. Let these children speak their mind. Let them learn to articulate their feelings. Let them know that they can express their pain, their frustration. Living as a minority and living as a second-class citizen and being a victim of systemic racism in America is a lot to deal with. Some of us adults, we've done it so long We've developed coping mechanism. Coping mechanism. Our spiritual life has helped us, but it's been so long that it's been normalized, and some of us has forgotten what a tragedy it is to be young and your mind not fully developed and to be mistreated for nothing. I mean, that's something that we all have worked through. We have prayed through it. I tell folks all the time, I don't know how you can be a black person in America and live in this system of white supremacy and racism and not have a spiritual relationship that anchors your life and gives you courage and give you a source of strength and gives you a self-identity so you can withstand stereotypes. I used to always remember when I was a little boy and we used to go to church, and I could never understand why everybody moaned and why they pat their feet and why folks were crying. And as you live and go through trials and tribulations, if you go through hell and you've been mistreated and the systems have mistreated you and there's no justice for you, the older you get, you begin to understand authentic black worship. You understand the lived experience of oppression and of the struggle. And that's why as Christian folks in the black community, I think that's why a lot of us really relate to Jesus and the cross. Being crucified is a reality that poor folks and black folks can really relate to, because we have carried the cross for a long time. We've carried the cross. Some of us have never read the Bible, and we still got a cross on our back. But through the years, by and by, we all were able to make it through. Somebody else was praying for us, and somebody else was crying for us. But life has not been a bed of roses. And so sometimes, we suppress the pain and the torment so bad that we just feel like it'll be all right. And we just think that if we just sit down and wait that somebody's coming to save us. I'm here to tell you that God is here and the Holy Spirit is in your heart, that he's given us all the power and all the knowledge we need to achieve what we're working for and what we're praying for. We're working for first-class citizenship. We're praying for first-class citizenship. We want to be treated fair. We want equity. We want the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. We want our kids to be safe. We don't want young black boys to be shot down and murdered. We don't want our girls to have to identify themselves as less than because they've accepted some European image. You have to see yourself in the image of God and know that we all are beautiful, because we are creations of our Creator. And so it matters not the situation, it matters not the opposition. We're going to prevail. We're going to experience victory because God is on our side. And we're going to continue to pray. But we must organize. And we must understand that God is on our side. But he wants us to be the voice, the hands, the feet. He wants us to be the angels to do the work. And those of us who have that faith, have that calling, and have that love in our hearts, we need to be leaders and examples to the rest of us. And never give up and put our backs against the wall and fight for justice for all of us, even our white brothers and sisters. We want justice and fairness for everybody. And Father, help you. Help us. Help ourselves. I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. I love enough to tell you the truth. I respect you enough to give the facts. I'll see you next Monday night, but we're going to have a discussion about how you run for office and how you get on the ballots and how we get people ready to vote and how all of us collectively have a voice. And we will not be set aside or put down under because of sexism, racism, classism. Any of the isms, we're going to fight them all because that's what we believe in. So look, you pray for me, and I pray for you. And I'm your host, Kenneth Myers Sr. And if I had to do anything else, I wouldn't do nothing but this. That'd be a voice of the people. So next time, you pray for me and I pray for you. Get registered to vote. Wear your mask, get tested, and take the vaccine. And remember, God is on our side.